I want to talk a little bit about 3 games that I'm watching this week. We've got a lot of big games for week 2 on the slate. Texas and Alabama is a no-brainer, right? The whole country is going to be watching that one. A lot of folks are going to be really interested to see how Texas's offensive line holds up against Alabama's defensive front, because there were some shaky moments against Rice that Texas has to sort out before this game on Saturday, or it could be a pretty long day for the UT offense. Texas Tech and Oregon is another one that a lot of folks are going to be watching. That's not one of my 3 on my list. I will be watching it. I'm not saying that these are the only 3 games I'm watching. These are 3 games that I'm going to watch that maybe not a lot of other folks are going to watch. Texas Tech and Oregon is on a lot of folks are going to watch that game. In spite of Texas, or maybe because Texas Tech lost at Wyoming in week 1, right? This is like a really weird wounded dog trying to fight back. Plus, it's a night game in Lubbock for one of the biggest non-conference night games that I can remember Texas Tech hosting. Oregon just put up, 81 points on Portland State last week. Are they going to be able to do that against a Power 5 defense that at times looked pretty good against Wyoming, at other times looked like maybe Texas Tech underestimated Wyoming a little bit? Sounds familiar to TCU fans because that's kind of what happened against Colorado this week as well. I'm on the record already as saying that Texas Tech will win this football game. I made that prediction before the season started. I'm going to stick with it. There are a lot of things about that Wyoming loss that are interesting to me. I talked a little bit about maybe Tech didn't take Wyoming as seriously as they should have. I talked a little bit about the defense showing signs of life at times. I also wonder if Texas Tech wasn't already thinking about Oregon in week 2 when they traveled up to Laramie for that football game. Wyoming's a weird place to play as well. It's a higher elevation than Boulder. It's a higher elevation than Denver, right? So there's just some challenges to that for teams that aren't acclimated. I think this is going to be a fun football game to watch when Oregon heads down to Lubbock this week. And then the third no-brainer that everybody's going to be watching, Baylor and Utah. Things could be heading very south for Baylor very quickly this season. This is a team that looked bad defensively against Texas State. G.J. Kinney did a lot of really good things to get Texas State's offense ready for that game against Baylor. And on the opposite side, Baylor has a defensive coordinator who that was his first experience calling defensive plays since he coached a powder puff team as a junior in high school. That's a choice that Dave Aranda has made, and now a choice that Dave Aranda has to live with. We'll see for how long. But one thing that I do know about that football game is that Utah will not have any conflicting feelings about continuing Baylor down the path that they seem that they are on. Utah is going to step on their neck and have no qualms with that. But a lot of folks are going to be watching that happen. Here are the 3 games, though, that I am interested in this week outside of TCU Nicholls and the games that I just mentioned. I'm very interested in Oklahoma State, Arizona State. A preview of a future Big 12 conference game. The Cowboys, they're coming off of a game where they intentionally played 3 different quarterbacks in week 1. They broke the game up into thirds. It's already broken up into quarters, but they chose to break it up into thirds and play all of their quarterbacks in roughly equal amount of time. That was a choice that they made because they still don't have a QB1 officially. And on the other side of this matchup, Arizona State started a true freshman that TCU fans are familiar with, Jaden Rashada. He was down to TCU and Arizona State after he decommitted and got out of his letter of intent at Florida. Ended up at his father's alma mater, Arizona State. He looked good at times. He looked like a true freshman at times. And they hung on to barely beat Southern Utah 24-21. I am on the record as having the under on Oklahoma State's win total this year. I got criticized for that on Twitter. A lot of you think I'm foolish because Oklahoma State has a relatively light schedule. They only play 1 team from the state of Texas in conference this year, and it's Houston. I'm sticking with the under. 6.5. I just don't see them getting to 7 wins this year. I just don't see it. I think this ends up being a loss for Oklahoma State. We'll see how wrong I am come late Saturday night. I don't think this one kicks off until about 9:30 Central. Game 2 that I'm absolutely going to watch. You know I'm watching Colorado, Nebraska. I want to see Colorado's team speed against that Big Ten defense. I want to see how much Nebraska runs the football, does exactly what TCU probably should have done more of in that game, and just assert themselves on the ground against a Colorado defense that I still believe at this very moment is not very good. They had a couple of good moments against TCU. Travis Hunter is undoubtedly a freak at cornerback, but you know how you avoid issues with their cornerbacks and safeties? You run the football. And Nebraska is set up beautifully to run the football against this Colorado defense. I think they're going to try and shorten this game. I think they're going to try and control the ball. And I think that will keep this pretty close. I would not be surprised if Colorado won. I would not be surprised if Nebraska upset Colorado, because that game is completely flipped as far as the line is concerned. But I want to see if Colorado can reproduce some of the success they had against TCU, and if Nebraska can be successful in the ground and shorten things out. Very excited about that game. And for this third game, there were a couple of options. I could have gone with Texas A&M Miami, but I think Texas A&M kind of runs away with that game. I don't think it's going to be terribly interesting. Iowa State is hilarious for a couple of reasons this year, especially when you think about the fact that a certain former president decided to show up to this football game. So they've got a lot of gambling things that have been going on in the offseason. They've lost a lot of players. Brian Ferentz has a scoring and win total milestone that he has to hit, or he's fired at the end of the year. Matt Campbell's window to maybe get another job is closing pretty quickly at this point. And now you have a pretty polarizing political figure that's going to make an appearance at this football game as well. That was another option that I ended up passing on. The third game that I'm going to watch this week is actually a good tribute to my friend Brian Estridge, the voice of the Frogs. You all know him. He's a great guy. I'm going to be watching North Carolina App State this weekend. I'm very interested in this storyline about North Carolina's defensive line, because South Carolina made them look like world beaters in week 1. Is that actually the case? I'm not sure. I'm not sold on that yet. We only have one data point to work with on that so far. I'm very interested to see how App State handles North Carolina's defense. I think App State might be better than South Carolina this year. That's just me. And I want to see if the Tar Heels can handle what the Mountaineers are going to bring their direction. So I want to see. I'm interested to see how for real North Carolina's defense is. I think App State gives them a pretty good test of that this year, or this week in week 2. So those are the 3 games: Oklahoma State, Arizona State, Colorado, Nebraska, and UNC App State. Those are the 3 games that I am watching this weekend.